1935, the Lions win the NFL championship. The Detroit Tigers take the World Series. The Red Wings bring home Lord Stanley's Cup. Joe Louis begins his rise to world domination. This transforms the Motor City into Detroit, City of Champions.
All righty. Anchors away, Detroit City of Champions, the podcast. I'm Jamie Flanagan.
Charles Avison.
I'll get it right one of these days. I swear to God, man.
What you get?
I left my email open and it dings saying, "You're live on YouTube." And I get an email. And,
that's a little idiosyncrasy.
It's like walking and chewing gum.
I think you're the only one in the world that noticed that.
Oh, no. Everybody who has email goes, "Oh, is my email? What?
Oh,
okay. What? I
didn't notice anything. I thought it was like the starting buzz. The little beep to start the show or something. Like the on-air sign's on now or
something.
I
don't think so. But Detroit City of Champions, the podcast, talking about 1935 and things leading up to it, the magnificent year in Detroit sports. And we were talking, Gar Wood, we're deep into the waters,
we're deep,
man.
Yeah, we're very deep.
We're wading into the deep end
of
the story and of the Gar Wood story. And last week we were talking about, man, him and his mechanic, they took a beating.
Well, the last week's show was like just one of those. It's one of those just pulse. I mean, it's one of the greatest stories in Detroit sports history. In the idea that what was it? 13 days before the race starts, the boat explodes on the Detroit River.
Right.
They just get these new engines installed, these brand new engines. And they've never ridden so fast in
Did
their
they
life.
turn this into a graphic novel or something?
Well, that's your cue to put up the graphic novel.
Yeah,
so we actually have
so we talked about that last time, and they turned it into a graphic novel.
Yeah, I don't even
speaking.
I don't have the date and I don't even have which comic this came out of. It wasn't its own like comic book, but it was featured. It was featured in some. I don't even know. I just got it off eBay a long time ago. But I actually say in the book, like, undated and unknown, comic book that this came out of. But it illustrates the panels of that story we talked about, where, this is that 1928 race, where he's, the English are coming over. They're bringing the boat to Detroit for the first time. They've got this new Napier Lions engine, which is like, the newest cutting edge engine, and it outdoes. It's a 1,000 horsepower engine, and it's better than what Gar Wood's got. So he's got to tune it up.
There's two really crazy parts of the story. One, the mechanic get his neck cut,
and his jugular veins
cut, and he's in the hospital, and he's like, "You cut your jugular? That's like all she wrote."
They said the whole water around him was full of blood.
So,
and they even show that on the comic strip. They show Orland Johnson, is his mechanic in the boat. And back then you had the driver, which was Gar Wood, and then you had the mechanic, which is Orland Johnson. And they're like, "My God, Orland's dead. The water's full of blood, and he's his jugular's slit, and he's done."
But so there's two parts of that. One, how badly Orland was hurt.
Yeah.
And then the second part was they had another race to run. They needed these big engines, but they were at the bottom of the river. They had no real idea exactly where they were. They had to go on Mission Impossible.
It was the search for the engines. Exactly. That's the story. That's before last episode I said.
It was so fun. And
if this isn't one of the greatest stories you've ever heard with regards to Detroit sports, then I'm a liar and don't listen to any more episodes. That was a pretty bold thing. So if you're still listening to the show, it means that you believe that it was one of the best stories ever in Detroit sports history.
So the graphic novel, if you're listening to the audio podcast, you do have to take the time to go find either Facebook or YouTube and find the video version of it, because the clips are in there, and as we're talking through, I'm putting up the 3 different pages, and it's just so
cool.
The little drawings are cool and everything. It's very reminds me of the very Spider-Man-y
totally.
things.
Yeah, it's all illustrated. It's exactly. It's like a I would say 1950s.
So
late 1940s, early 1950s, color panels. It's
very cool stuff.
It's a classic thing that they would have, some little kid would have read and reading the story about Gar Wood and how cool he was, because he was such a legend.
Yeah,
they're doing comic strip they're doing, and that's not even a comic strip. It's like it's a graphic novel. And there's actually 2 more pages that I didn't include. I might actually bring those out for. There's another little bit. It's a little bit generic. It's like Gar Wood won this race, and he won this race, and then he did this boat. Like it was a little. It wasn't this, but this story was the focal point of this story they're trying to. I think the whole thing was 5 pages long.
Yeah, very cool. It's very, very cool. And so the such a dramatic event it just played well for a graphic novel.
Absolutely.
And so where are we going next? What's happening? We lose somebody today?
Well,
should we brace ourselves?
Well, you should. The title of the episode today is "Death of a Speed Pioneer."
Holy smoke! So before we move any further, if you want people to know about the death of a speed pioneer, you need to share this.
Share take a minute right now to like the video, like it right now,
subscribe, collect, whatever it might be, wherever you're listening. We do appreciate you here with us, and then tell a couple of friends. That's cool stuff. Yeah. So, all right. So as we shared, and we're gonna pass this on. What's happening?
So where we left off last week, we left off with this incredible story again, where they have to dredge these engines out of the bottom of Lake St. Clair.
It's crazy,
and it's not like they just like, oh, there's the engines, let's go get them. There was an entire story. Like they had Packard at the Packard plant had an entire wing ready to go, just dedicated just to the spot when they found the engines. Yeah. And then they had like the police escort ready to go to take them straight to Packard at a moment's notice. The builders are already been in the boat, and then Orland Johnson gets out of the hospital, and they drop him into the boat, like like barely can get into the boat because he's so mangled up. But he's Gar Wood's mechanic. He's got to be there.
Good Lord.
They couldn't find some other mechanic. They had to bring poor Orland out of the hospital, and lower him in with a. They actually talk about
you see
how
the doctors standing there smoking the cigar. I don't know if this is a good idea, but if you really want to take him,
they actually said in that quote that they had to lower him into the boat with like a hoist. Lord. He couldn't get into by his own power. So out of the Miss America 6 is born the Miss America 7, and they win the race is almost anticlimactic because they win the 1928 Harmsworth Trophy. They beat Joe Carstairs and that, And so the next step is 1929. Carstairs returns to Detroit with the new boat, the Estelle 4, once again challenging Gar Wood in 1929 for this for the Harmsworth, and so she comes to Detroit, and on the second lap of the race. There's a broken oil line in her boat, and the boat basically dies out on the track, and so the race once again is a race between the Miss America 7 and Gar Wood's newly built Miss America 8.
Okay,
and so who do you think won the race?
Which one was Gar driving again?
the Miss America 8.
I bet you that's the one that won.
That's the one that won. So whatever boat he's driving is the one that wins. That's what's so crazy. It gets so anyway. So the Miss America 8.
He ain't taking the dog for a walk.
No,
he's prancing the pony. That's what he's doing.
So Gar wins in the Miss America 8. So he locks in the 1929 Harmsworth Trophy, which is now his fourth. So he's got 5 gold cups, 4 Harmsworth trophies. There's just no. I mean, we talked about a couple episodes ago how he's just in search of competition. He just, and this is where he's at. So because he's in search of competition, because he sees this, this Estelle 4 breaks down and this and that. So Wood now is like, okay, so after this race is over, Wood invites Carstairs and her entire engineering crew to literally to walk through his boat building plant and like take notes, take photos, look at everything he's doing because
he wants to make it a race.
He really wants to race.
Not by dumbing it down, which is what the Gold Cup people wanted to do.
Exactly.
They're like, all right, let's limit.
He wants to bring people up.
I want unlimited.
Yes.
And that's why it was the unlimited. They were called the unlimited.
Unlimited hydroplane boats. Yeah. So,
and it was like, let's not dumb it down. Let's ramp this bad boy up.
That's what's so cool is that this guy is a true sportsman. I mean, in every sense of the word. He's literally trying. There was one race where he was against the French where he sent his engineers to help them try to get their boat up and running to try to race him, and they couldn't even. His own engineers couldn't even get their.
He doesn't want a ribbon for participating.
No, absolutely not. So that's what I mean. So he actually invites, and actually have a little quote, just a little one sentence quote where they asked him. This is again J. Lee Barrett, Speedboat Kings. And so they asked him why he let the competition check out his boat factory, and he says if they can build boats like mine. If they can build boats like mine, he said, we might have a good race someday. That's all I want. So he's seeking competition. He's so dominant that he's telling everybody how to do his thing so that he can race them because he wants the competition. So that being said, so going forward, we're about to enter into the most. He's about to get what he wants.
Okay.
He's about to get what he wants.
The game is afoot.
And more.
To
a high level degree.
Okay.
And so but in order to really move on, and before you can even begin talking about the rest of Gar Wood's story, we have to take a little bit. It's not a detour. It's totally it's a major component of the story. But we have to talk about somebody else. And so this man's name is Sir Henry Segrave. Segrave, yes. And this is, I want to stop for a second real quick too and say, this is one of the reasons why I'm so glad to be doing this show.
Yeah.
Because this guy, when I was reading about him, and I did a whole section in the book about him. I mean, he's an essential part of the story. This guy is like one of, like we talked about, Curtiss aircraft engine, these guys, but Sir Henry Segrave is just one of the coolest people. Like, I mean, very few people, maybe people in boating circles know about him.
It's not Sir Graves Ghastly.
It's not that
different. No,
yes.
Segraves.
Yes,
different.
Segrave. Yes.
All right. So where's he from?
So he's actually from America. He was born in America in 1896.
All right.
But his family moved. He was born in Baltimore, Maryland. But his mother was American. His father was Irish. And the family actually moved back to Ireland.
I'm liking him more by the minute.
Yeah, so he went the other direction. All these other immigrants are coming in the early 1900s.
You're talking me language. All right.
So all these immigrants are coming over here in the early 1900s. Right. They're going back.
Yeah, that's around when my grandfather was coming in and out.
Yeah, so he's actually going the other direction, right? Yep. So there's like, the boats coming from the Statue of Liberty is full of immigrants, and there's the boats going back with like one immigrant, and that's his family.
That's around the time my grandfather he came here. He was born in 1882, something like that, 1888.
So they came over. They came over on those boats,
and he came over and he got really, really sick. He might have been in Chicago. Got really, really sick, and he went home. He went home to die. I got better.
Really? Jeez.
he got better. He recovered. So he came back, and then he married my grandmother here.
Well, it's a good thing you
in Detroit.
I'm glad he did. You
in 1922.
Yeah.
So my grandmother and grandfather were like rocking around because they got married in 22.
Okay.
My dad, and my mom, they were both born in 32, so they were infants, but their older siblings were about 7 years older, 10 years older. So they would have been like 10 years
Straight
old
from Ireland,
when this was happening. My grandmother, she came in through Canada. So she was like, her folks were from Ireland, lived in Canada, and then came to Detroit. And my grandfather's straight from the island.
So Flanagan's not just a pretty sounding name. It's actually literally Irish.
Yeah, that's it. My dad ended up getting his Irish passport. I want to get mine.
That's why wouldn't you?
I want to get the Irish passport. Since my dad got his now, so my dad got his, I can get mine.
Yeah.
So I want to have two passports.
Get it.
I'm working on it.
What you doing on this show talking to me for?
I know.
Go get your passport.
I know. But Segrave's born here.
Yeah, so he goes back to Ireland,
right.
And so he's there. So this is the generation. All these people that are born in like the very late 1800s.
Mm-hmm.
These are all the people that are going to fight in World War I. Right. And so this is that gen. I mean, really, a lot of the people we've talked about have World War I experience. These are people that how the war impacted them.
Yep.
Patsy Clark for the Lions coach. He was he was in France for that. So there's so anyways, so this guy here, however. Segrave is going to become a war hero, and I'm just going to kind of walk through some of the stuff because this guy, like I say, anybody that has a chance to really go look this guy up and spend some time,
mm-hmm.
It's just he's got an incredible story. We're just going to kind of
is he revered anywhere like in Ireland?
Oh,
is he like
big time?
Okay, fair play.
Yeah, but I don't know if a lot of people know his name now necessarily, but in his day he was one of the most famous people in England.
Okay,
he was one of the most famous people in England.
Was he prominent in England or in Ireland or both?
England, because England primarily. Maybe Ireland too. I'm not sure, but he at one point he moved to England. But I saw when I was getting the slides ready for today, there was like one of those blue circles that said Sir Henry Segrave lived here for 4 years, lived in flat number 8. One of those things like a historical marker that had on the side of a building that says, Sir Henry Segrave spent 4 years in this flat. You know what I mean? That's where it's of historical significance for like a 4-year stretch of his life lived in this place, and it's on the the English historical tour. You know what I mean? Where it's an official place that you're not allowed to damage. You know what I mean? That's that kind of. He had that kind of at least in his day, he was one of the most famous, and so. So a little bit of a rundown for his World War I career. So he goes to Eton College and then Sandhurst Military Academy. Entered World War I like right off the bat, 1914 as an infantry lieutenant.
Right.
And so in May of 1915, he's really badly injured in hand-to-hand combat, and he's dragged off the battlefield in critical condition. Okay, so he returns to war the very next year, but this time he's in the British Air Service
Because that dragged on.
Yeah, for 4 years, yeah. So he returned to war the very next year in the British Air Service. So within 2 months, he's promoted to captain and wing commander after downing 4 enemy planes. And so, in April of 1916, he's shot down, found unconscious in a mangled tree, recovered, and then returned back to the war. So this guy is like, I mean, he starts off on the ground and in the trenches, injured, wounded, comes back in the air, and then gets promoted to the ranks, and then gets shot down again. Like, you know what I mean? Like this, he's there. You know, he's in France. He's fighting. So just across this, across this time period, he just makes a name for himself as this guy who's a warrior. He's in the air. He's doing all this. So anyways, so it's really after the war that he begins to really make a name for himself, because post-war, he begins to drive. It's like, I don't know how you get this job, but he gets a job driving experimental cars for a British company called Sunbeam.
Okay.
So he's a experimental car driver.
Not not big into blenders. It's different
yeah.
Sunbeam.
It might be the same
Irons,
company. Well, it might be
blenders.
Sunbeam might be the same company now.
It
They may have evolved.
Yeah.
But back in this day, he's driving it. He's like,
experimental cars.
I hear you got a help wanted poster for an experimental car driver.
Grabbing the sign out of the window.
But you can see how his track record in the war suits that.
Sure.
It's not like he was just kind of a random guy and just did whatever and then out of nowhere. He's getting shot down. He's like, this guy's that job totally suits him. So anyways, so he's experimental car driver for Sunbeam. And so in 1923, you can throw a couple. Yeah, there you got it. Perfect time. So you got these. So in 1923, he using these experimental cars, he wins the French Grand Prix, and then in 1924, he wins the San Sebastian Grand Prix, which is a Spanish Grand Prix. And then in 1926, March 21st, he sets the land speed record in a Sunbeam Tiger. The car is called the Lady Bird, and he sets the land speed record with 152.33 miles per hour. 1927, he becomes the first human being to travel at 200 miles an hour.
How many miles per hour?
200.
200.
First human being to ever travel 200 miles per hour.
All right. Because those first land speed records were set here in Detroit.
And this is in Daytona. This is Daytona.
All right. And then
because they drive it on the sands, the hard packed sand.
Yep. So they started here in Detroit on the frozen River. Henry Ford set one himself.
Yeah.
I think it was like 65 or 95 miles an hour. Something like that
too,
in 1907 or something. And then, then they moved to Florida on the hard sand and then to the desert after that when they were driving the supersonic crazy stuff.
Yeah.
But, so this was, he's the first person to break 200 in Daytona.
The first
I think I was running 200 miles an hour from the cops on spring break in Daytona.
Yeah,
but that's a different story.
Following the path of Segrave. So this 200 miles per hour in the Sunbeam, the cutter is called the Mystery, and so he sets the world record, just the all-time world record, 203.79 miles per hour on Daytona Beach, Florida, and so 1929, so basically like 2 years later, a year and a half later, he's back to Daytona Beach and he crushes his own speed record, 231.45 miles an hour.
How many years later?
Just 2 years later. This is 1929.
These numbers are jumping.
So
man.
just as Gar Wood, and the same year that Gar Wood is beating Carstairs for his fourth Harmsworth, Segrave is just crushing these records. 231.45. That's one of the slides we have here. You can actually see it with the car, with this car that he's got. And so this. So at this point in time,
231. That's a cover of, or that's a poster.
It's
just
this
like
yellow
a promo
car.
Poster,
yeah. It's this Sunbeam. It's like
that's cool.
It's the coolest car. Yeah.
That almost looks like a concept.
Yeah, I know. It's got the fins, but 230. I mean, so think about it. Back then, This car is
This is spaceman movie stuff.
That's what I'm trying to say. This is 1929.
People are like, no. People that haven't seen the pictures or a video clip or a movie clip of it, the newsreel clip of it, they're like, nah, not happening.
Yeah,
they're not buying it. It's unbelievable.
That car is called the Golden Arrow.
The Golden
Arrow.
And
it's still in existence. You can still see it.
Really?
Yeah. I forgot where it's at, but you can actually see it online. There's actually pictures of it. But the cool thing is, you hit the nail right on the head. It's people like this. It's illustrations like this that create this sense of, and this is 1929. That like it's futuristic.
Yeah.
Like the world is like the technology improvements are so rapid. Like we're looking at like the internet and stuff going, oh my God, the technology is advancing so fast. Well, the same thing. These people were thinking the same thing. Like, man, 2 years ago, the first person to break 200 miles an hour. Now he's crushing it at 231 in a car that looks like. This thing is. I mean, look at the picture of it. This thing is headed to the moon or something.
No, it is.
It's an incredibly cool, illustration of this thing, but this is the kind of stuff that's lighting the imagination of people. It's Segrave. It's Gar Wood racing a train. It's these people that are breaking, breaking the barriers or pushing the barriers of what's possible. That's creating the dreams of especially the youth. Especially the youth. They're seeing the kids are seeing this in their childhood and their imaginations are growing. Going, man, where are we going to be in 30 years or whatever?
That abstract drawing.
Yeah,
it's like, but compared to the real one. It's like, look at that thing. It's like crazy.
Yeah.
It's like, I think the actual, because this is if you're listening to the audio podcast again, this
it's
is
like the Batmobile.
This is a day. Yeah, this is a day to go and find that video.
Totally.
Because this drawing. The drawing doesn't do this justice.
Yeah, this thing is futuristic. It's the Golden Arrow, man.
It's
so cool.
I got to figure out.
I mean, it's like a gold Batmobile, and it's real. Like it wasn't just a film prop. This guy pushed this thing to 231 miles an hour in the sands of Daytona.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm saying. But this is the kind of stuff that's firing people's imaginations. That like the future is going to be crazy. It's going to be like, we could go to the moon one day. I mean, it's 30 years later, or whatever. We're going 40 years later. We're going to the moon.
The drawing on that poster barely does it justice.
Yeah, I mean, the picture's awesome. That's where I think that's your point.
And then I found it. I'm like, holy crap, this is even cooler than
it's even cooler than the illustration, which is trying to it's trying to make it look cool. And the real thing is even cooler.
It's amazing. And if you Google it, there's breakdowns, and they have the engine torn apart.
Yeah,
they have the chassis off.
Look it up, Golden Arrow.
There's some neat things to see on that. So
231.
Segrave.
So Segrave pushes this thing 200. So at the same time, thereabouts at the same time, the Gar Wood wins his fourth.
Segrave ever get in the water?
So it's funny you should ask that question. That's the very next thing to say. So on the same boat. That
was not planned either.
No, it wasn't. We're in sync.
I just want to know. I just want to know. Did he ever get in the water?
Absolutely. So here's the thing. So before I say anything, so here's the thing. So at this moment that Segrave is doing this, Segrave is an international hero.
Yeah.
First human to go 200 miles an hour.
Yeah.
Then the next year he crushes it at 231, right? This is British engineering. This is British cars doing it on Daytona Beach, Florida.
And then you have this thing with like these the national pride. And you're just coming out of World War I.
Taking the words out of my mouth. He's the pride of Britain. I actually have it written right here in my notes. The pride of Britain.
So and it's a thing. It's because you're coming out of these war situations, and people are struggling to because I mean.
It's a new world. The war's over. Everybody's turned the page. Everybody's looking towards the future.
I mean, a lot of people are jacked up from the mustard gas, and then cities were just bombed out.
True.
And people are looking for things to motivate them and be excited about.
Yeah, but people are also kind of looking to. I mean, they're not trying to forget the war, but it's like it's almost.
Why
like
are we proud about ourselves? Because we even though we won, we got our butts handed to us while winning.
Well, true, but they're looking. But now it's like that was the World War I was called the war to end all wars.
Yeah.
World War II had not happened.
If that
yet.
were true,
Hitler was not. Hitler was nowhere even near taking power in anything. So World War II was not even at this point. As we start to get into the 30s, yes, but in 29, World War II was the furthest thing away. So now for these people, like the future is what is wide open. You know, okay, the war to end all wars has happened. The future is wide open. You've got, but like I say, here we go. Segrave is a national hero. And in fact, he's in Florida. Gar Wood spent a ton of time in Florida. He got, acquainted with, he got to know Segrave because Gar Wood's the speed on water,
Right.
So, but here's the thing that right there is an important concept. So Segrave is the master of speed on land. Gar Wood is the master of speed on water. But the British also had what was called the Schneider Cup.
Okay.
And there was a British company called Supermarine. And there's people may be familiar with that name because of the plane, which is one of the most iconic planes in the history of just planes, which is called the Supermarine Spitfire. And that was one of the planes that won World War II, the Battle of Britain. It's just absolutely a legendary. And it wasn't the plane, but it was one of the planes that won this. That won the war. It's just like one of the most iconic planes of all time is the Supermarine Spitfire. And so after the war, Supermarine is still making engines and they're still making planes. And so the British had a firm grip on the Schneider Cup, which was that basically it was the Harmsworth Trophy of the air. You see what I'm saying? Like you had to have the best plane and it had to be the most maneuverable and longest distance and all these different things. And so the British had, so in essence, the British were the masters of the land and air. And they needed, and all that was needed was to be master of the air, sea, and land was to beat Gar Wood.
Right. Yeah.
Right. So they'd be and especially the British
going for the trifecta.
And the British have long since had this identity as one of the greatest sea powers in history. And so that for them not to avail. I mean, if they were to throw the other two in and trade for the masters of the sea, they would probably do that. It was almost like an insult that they weren't masters of the sea. And the Harmsworth Trophy wasn't their personal possession. And so Segrave. So anyways, on the same boat as that the Golden Arrow was coming to Daytona Beach, on that exact boat, like on the shipping container that brought that Golden Arrow over, was also a new boat built by the British called the Miss England 1.
Ooh.
Yeah, so Gar Wood's on his Miss America 7, Miss America 8, and coming over on this same boat with Segrave is the Miss England 1, okay? So this boat in the advertisement that we showed here with this Golden Arrow, if you look close on the boat or on the illustration, this advertisement you can actually see Wakefield castor oil.
Okay, yeah.
So Wakefield was a British oil tycoon, and he was using this advertisement to market this Castrol.
Uh-huh.
And so he's an oil. So like I say, he's this oil tycoon, and so he's got as deep a pockets as a person can have.
yeah.
Right.
He thought the hydraulic lift guy had some money.
Yeah. So he's got this is as deep a pockets as you can get.
Yeah.
So now the British are masters of the air and masters of land as far as speed and championships in this. Mm-hmm. And so now, Wakefield as this oil tycoon, he wants as a proud British man, and he wants the Harmsworth, right? And so over this course, so he brings this Miss America 1 boat over here, right? And this boat is in 1929, the same year that Gar Wood wins his Harmsworth, there's a race in Florida at the same point called the Miami Regatta. Okay. And so Segrave gets in the boat for the Miami Regatta, and he beats Gar Wood.
Oh, that doesn't happen very often.
It never happens. Gar's
like, Rrr?
So Gar Wood's driving the Miss America 7, not the 8. He's got the 7. And Miss England 1 beats the Miss America 7, right? In a straight-up race. Like, the Miss America doesn't break down or doesn't do anything. This is a race.
Game on.
The news is flashed across the world.
Gar Wood's like shaking the dust off his shoulders. Says, game on, man.
Exactly. The master of, this 231 mile an hour on land, man, Segrave, beats Gar Wood.
Oh.
Right? And this is not for the Harmsworth, but it's the Miami Regatta, right?
Right.
And so... And so Wood actually, far from being disappointed,
Sure.
Wood is actually happy because he's in
Competition.
And he's got this, Segrave, who's like this speed merchant, and they've got Wakefield, the money man. And so now he's like, well, I got to foster this competition. So what he does is to stoke this. So Segrave and Miss England 1 is scheduled to race in the Venice Regatta in Italy for a trophy called the Count Volpi Cup. Is in Italy a very prestigious cup. In the Italy and that.
Okay.
So anyways. So Gar Wood sends the Miss America 5 and the Miss America 7 to race the Miss England 1 in the he doesn't bring the Miss America 8, right? He doesn't bring the 8. It's just top of the line boat. So he's kind of sending his two a little bit weaker boats because he doesn't necessarily want to win.
Sure.
Right? But he's not going to pilot the boats, and he's not even going to make the trip.
Which one did he send?
He sends the 5 and the 7.
The 5 and the 7.
So the 7's the one that was, the boat, the engines.
You just got beat.
So yes. So here's the thing. So the engine from, remember the story with the engine from the 6 became the Miss America 7 to beat Carstairs. And so the 5, it's the 5 and the 7 that are brought over. And so the 7 having, was, in this race, had just won this, or it just lost this race in Miami. And so by all accounts, the boat had been sort of beat up and they didn't even really repair it.
Yeah.
Because the race happens in the same year. It's almost like they packed up the boat, they sent it to Venice right after the Miami race. So they hadn't even really repaired it. So I'm going to read a quote of the race from 1929. It's a tremendous story. And there's no way I could do anywhere near the justice that
Speedboat Kings.
Speedboat King. There's no way I can do justice like J. Lee Barrett. If I had 100 golden tongues and I, spoke for 100 years, I'd not be able to speak as well as J. Lee Barrett can write. So.
And what boat is this? The England 1 too?
So Miss England 1, piloted by Segrave, and Gar Wood is sending the 5 and the 7 over to race in this Venice Regatta. And so Gar Wood knows he's kind of sending like a handicap because he himself is not going, and he's not sending his best boat. But so he's almost like sending boats
testing
over
the water.
Well, he's sending some boats over to give Segrave
beat them up a little bit before he's got to put the big dog out there.
I think that he kind of hopes that Segrave's going to win again to stoke the fervor further to get the interest up, so that there's a Harmsworth challenge that he can once again defend. I mean, this is the theme: is that Gar Wood is trying to stoke the competition, and you're not going to stoke competition by being so dominant that nobody has a chance. Right. So he wants to make people think that there's a chance, right?
Rope-a-dope. It's rope-a-dope.
That's how good he is.
He's rope-a-dope.
So, I mean, it's not really rope-a-dope.
I don't know. I don't even
know
what that means.
Rope-a-dope is being defensive like Muhammad Ali.
Okay,
it's like his boxing stance. No, he's trying.
Sounded good.
So he's trying to encourage the competition. So a better thing is really another way to put it is that he's kind of like hamstringing himself. Right. It's like a runner at a race that's like running with like 10-pound shoes because he wants the little kid to win and bolster his confidence. You know what I mean, or something like that. So that's more akin to what it is. He's trying to build the confidence of these people so that they will actually bring a legit challenge. All right. So anyway, I'm going to read the quote. So what does
Barrett say about this?
So this is the race. It's the Miss America 1 versus Miss England 1 versus the Miss America 5 and 7 in Italy for the Count Volpi Cup in the Venice Regatta in 1929. All right, so and so as we said, the Miss America 7 was a little bit beat up when they got it over there because it'd take a little bit of a pounding in that Miami Regatta. So here's the quote. So here's the quote right here. So Orland Johnson, Phil Wood, and Vance Smith were already in Venice with the Miss America 5 when the broken boat, i.e. the Miss America 7, had arrived. So let me just start over again. So because I actually have like this little parentheses in here, which kind of threw me off there. Orland Johnson, Phil Wood, and Vance Smith were already in Venice with the Miss America 5 when the broken boat arrived. They saw immediately that it could never stand the jarring of a fast race, but they had special orders from Wood. Phil Wood said, "It'll sound silly to all America if we don't put up some kind of a race." So Phil Wood and Orland Johnson drove the broken boat. Prince Carlo Rispoli, a son-in-law of Count Volpi and vice chairman of the Regatta Committee, piloted Miss America 5 with Vance Smith at the throttles. They, both American boats, had just started for the line, 200 yards back, when the gun blasted the signal. They had made a mistake in their time. Sir Henry Segrave had beaten them across. Vance Smith, engineering the 5th, i.e. the Miss America 5, pulled out the throttles. But before he could get any speed, the 7th thundered past like a bullet in a mad dash after Segrave, and the Miss England won. Vance could see Phil Wood and Johnson closing in on Segrave. Then, suddenly, for no apparent reason, the 7th shot about 12 feet into the air. Phil Wood and Johnson were pitched out of the cockpit. When the two white figures hit the water, they were 100 feet apart. The 7th kept going in a great white arc to the right, finally burying itself on the shore. It was destroyed. But Vance acted fast, throttled down the engines of the 5th, and Prince Carlo Ruspoli, driving, pulled up beside Johnson, floating on the surface. Johnson's head was thrown back. His mouth and eyes were open, like a dead man. Vance made one desperate leap. He took Johnson by the hair and lifted him out of the water with the strength of a crazed man, dragged the body over the hot engines, and started to administer artificial respiration. At the dock, the Italian doctors pronounced Johnson dead.
Oh.
But Vance kept working on him, desperately. "I know you're not dead, Orlin. I know it," he kept saying. "I don't believe them." The water kept pouring out of Johnson's mouth. Vance kept at him. They were in a speedboat now, racing to the Maritime Hospital at Santa Ana. Vance Smith didn't even remember how they got there. For 20 minutes in that mad bounding dash to the hospital, Vance kept working on his man. He began to believe Johnson really was dead. But just as their boat pulled up at the dock, Johnson let out a gasp. He was breathing. He was alive. Alive. That gasp, Vance said, it was the sweetest sound I ever heard in my life. Orlin Johnson lived, but his skull was fractured. Sir Henry Segrave won the race.
Oh.
So the second time in a row, within a year, Orlin Johnson they pronounced him dead on shore, or on the boat. They pronounced him dead. They said, listen to I'm going to read it one more time. This was the dramatic pause. He took Johnson by the hair and lifted him out of the water with the strength of a crazed man. He pulled Orlin out of the water by his hair into the boat. And with the strength of a crazed man, he was using adrenaline, dragged a full-grown man out of the water by his hair, dragged him over the hot engines, and started to administer, artificial CPR. At the dock, the Italian doctors pronounced Johnson dead.
Jeez.
The doctors pronounced him dead on the
CPR back
dock.
then was really just like pumping their arms up and down, though, I think.
Whatever it was at work, because they saved him. But they're sitting there. But they were like, he's dead.
Oh, my God.
What are you trying to do?
What are you doing? Stop pumping them arms up and down.
So a year prior.
I'm not done yet. Slit throat.
So a year prior, Orlin Johnson gets his jugular vein split and his slit in his throat by a board.
Is this his last race?
The very next year. No, this is Orlin Johnson. This is his mechanic.
Oh, my God.
This
he keeps
is Gar
going.
Wood's personal mechanic.
He keeps going.
Well, I don't want to give away what's going on in the story, but yeah, probably. Yeah.
This is not his last race.
He's not going to let it. No, he's not going to let
a little thing like dying on the water slow him down.
He's not going to a little thing like getting his throat slit by a board in one year, and the very next year he gets pitched 100 yards out of 100 feet off of a boat, and gets pronounced dead by Italian doctors.
Oh, good Lord!
He's not going to let these kind of little things get in the way
keep you down
of Gar Wood's supremacy of speed on the water. You know what I mean? Like but these are the people we're talking about.
Oh.
See? So yeah, this is just this Venice Regatta. You know what I mean? So Segrave wins the race. So once again. Word is, Gar Wood's boats, and maybe not Gar Wood in the flesh, but Gar Wood's been beaten. So this race is what leads Segrave and Wakefield to announce their challenge for the 1930 Harmsworth. You see, so now the gauntlet's thrown down. The 1930 Harmsworth is on. So at this point, this is where things really start to take a turn, right? For like the phenomenal for this Gar Wood story. Because now the British Air Ministry gets involved with this.
Oh, okay.
So now they've got the power of the British Air Ministry, and they're working with Rolls-Royce, and they develop a whole new engine. This we were talking previously about this Napier Lions engine, which is a 2,000 horsepower. Now they got a it was 1,000 horsepower, and Gar Wood had these these new engines that these Packards that were doing 1,000 horsepower and that. Now, this Rolls-Royce engine developed in conjunction with the British Air Ministry and the Rolls-Royce. These things are 2,000-pound horsepower engines. Yeah. Each of these engines has double the horsepower of every engine that Gar Wood has. And so a new boat is built with two of these engines. The Miss England 2. The Miss England 2 is born with two of these 2,000 horsepower engines installed. Right, so two of these engines equals all four of these engines, these two engines that Gar Wood's got.
Right.
So it's a whole this is a whole new.
And it's all a game
game
of weight and power. It's all a game of weight and power. Weight, power, and size, and
and how it can move through the water, the friction on the water too. So, anyways, you got the 7 up. So we got the picture of the Miss England 2.
Yep. Oh yeah, it's Miss England 2. All right.
Yeah. So the Miss England. I
missed my cue. Damn it.
Well, so the race we were just talking about, where Gar's racing him in Miami, and he also raced him in Venice.
Right.
He's going against the Miss England 1.
Right.
But now with these, now they've got these 2,000
monster
horsepower
inside this one.
Yeah, 2,000 horsepower Miss England 2.
Here's what you know what they don't have. They don't have Gar Wood behind the wheel.
That's true.
They don't have,
but they got
Orland.
Segrave. But they got Segrave.
All right, I give you a little bit of Segrave.
Segrave's awesome.
I'll take Gar Wood over Segrave.
Well, I mean, the water probably me too. But at this moment in time, they got a chance. They got a chance. They got their engines are massive. These things are beasts.
So you're saying there's a chance?
They're totally a chance. So. This new boat, the Miss England 2, is sent for the trial run, because now they're not only have they challenged Gar Wood, but before they even get to Detroit, they want to break Gar Wood's record before they even get to Detroit. Right?
The water speed record?
The water speed record,
which is at this point, on that, yeah.
Which is at this point, it's 92.836 miles an hour. That's Gar's record.
Sounding by the size of that England 2, they could stand a fair chance.
Well, exactly. This thing is about to be. They definitely stands a fair chance. So they're like,
I don't think I like that.
Yeah. So they want to.
I don't think you know what country you're broadcasting.
It reminds me of like the Rocket was like, you break my record, now I break you. It's like this. He's like, we want to break Gar Wood's record, and then we want to break Gar Wood.
Yeah.
That's their setup. And so to do this, there's a lake in England which is called Lake Windermere, and it's the biggest lake in England. Right. And so they bring the boat to Lake Windermere, and then I'm going to read you the quote of the story of them taking this boat to
what's this from, Speedboat Kings again?
This is Speedboat Kings.
Right,
most of the stuff I use is from Speedboat Kings because it's just such a phenomenal story.
Yeah, hell yeah.
So here we go. Okay, so
you know how much that book is worth?
She's like,
exactly what someone will pay for it.
Yeah, no, exactly what somebody will be paying for.
There you go. Anyway,
so that's
just a nod to
Chris. Much everything. It's a nod to Chris.
Chris just got one in the mail today. He's like, Chris is a big fan of the show and helping out with all kinds of graphics and stuff. Thank you, Chris.
Yeah, Chris got the steal of the century.
And he got
for like $6 or something.
Yeah. But I mean, it's listed for it's listed somewhere online for a couple places for
$800. I spent
$800.
Back 10 years ago, I spent like $120 on my copy.
And Chris found one for like $7.
Yeah, dude, I'm like, I asked him, I said, is there any more copies?
I was like, hell yeah, I was going to start Googling when I got to the studio. I forgot.
I'm like, don't know if there's any more in there. I'm going to pick myself up a couple extra copies.
But anyway, all right. So this quote about Segrave's going
for the record. So they're going for the record. Yeah. So we want to break Gar Wood's record.
What's Windermere? What?
So it's called Lake Windermere in England. It's the biggest lake in England. They want to give it some space, right? So Miss England 2 was ready on Friday, June 13th, 1930. Segrave, Michael Wilcox, engineer of the boat, and W. Hallwell of the Rolls-Royce Company, all dressed in spotless white overalls and special steel life belts, stepped into the cockpit. Segrave turned to Wilcox and said, "It's Friday the 13th. I wonder what's going to happen." 2 of them were going to their death.
Oh.
The boat shot out above the measured mile straightaway where the official timers stood, ready to dash over the measured mile laid out in the center of the lake between Lakeside and Ambleside. Segrave was making a few practice spins far out there above the markers. The Miss England 2 looked like a white ghost. Its wings of spray spread wide, its engines droning, a thing of beauty, symmetry, flawless grace. It was perhaps the most beautiful speedboat ever built, its bow and its aft end tapering almost to the thinness of a knife blade. It cut a great white arc in the water. Then it straightened, Segrave was cutting down towards the markers, his steady hand tight on the wheel, his eyes glued to the narrow glass flat path before him, his foot pressing the throttle to both engines. The engines cannoned louder as they approached the first marker. When he crossed, throttles down, the thing was like the mad screaming of 4,000 wounded war horses, agonized and frightened. Miss England 2 shot across the first mile at 96.41 miles per hour. 2 runs must be made across the measured mile, one against the wind or current, one with. It came back at 101.11 miles an hour. The average was 98.76, a new world record. But this courageous young Briton did not know he had broken the world record. He was not satisfied. He took his craft to the upper end of the course again and brought it back with everything it had. The roar was terrific. The official timers could not clock it this time. It did not complete the mile. It made a sudden turn. The quivering thing shot clear out of the water like a white rocket, its engines screaming. Segrave and his 2 men were pitched like meteors from the cockpit. There was a puff of blue, curling smoke, a dive, silence. 10 boats rushed to the rescue. Segrave himself was picked up by P.F. King of Windermere, who plunged into the lake after him. He was unconscious. Hallwell drowned. Wilcox was severely injured. Segrave and Wilcox were rushed to the hospital. Segrave suffered a broken arm, a broken rib, a fractured thigh. He regained consciousness for a few minutes. He turned to Lady Segrave at his bedside and asked, How are the lads?" Meaning his men. And then, "Did we do it?" Lady Segrave told him he had. Then that he had broke the record. He died in a few moments of lung hemorrhages. The drowned body of Hallwell was found, a pencil clutched in one hand, a pad of paper in the other. He'd evidently been taking tachometer readings. Wilcox recovered. Probably no one will ever know for sure what sent these men to their death. It may have been the tremendous torque of the tiny propeller. 20 minutes after the disaster, a water-soaked branch of a tree, 3 inches thick, was picked up several hundred yards from the stern of the boat. That may be the answer. No one knows. So that's the end. So at the moment of his death, at the moment of Segrave's death, he is the first person ever to hold the world record for speed on water and land at the same time. So Segrave, they broke the record at the moment of at the moment of his death. He didn't even at the time the boat exploded, he had no idea he was the record holder. But when he died, he knew. His wife told him, "Yes, you did. You broke the record." And then he died like 20 minutes later. So this is this career of this guy, his life comes to an end, his career comes to an end. And the death of Segrave this is like a national tragedy.
Yeah.
This is a national tragedy. Like they're all excitement building for this race. Everything, they got the Miss England 2. It sets
that's
they're
like
going to set
the
the world
Challenger
record.
blowing up.
Exactly.
It's like it's a shock.
Exactly.
People are rooting, cheering, invested, watching.
And they love this guy. He's a
joyous.
World War I hero. He's he's a land speed hero.
I compare that to the Challenger going. It's just everybody excited.
That is the type of feeling that radiates through this country. And you've got this guy who is like your hero. Like the momentum is building.
And he could have just went to the dock because he had the record.
He had the record. Yeah, he didn't know. So that's what I mean. So there's this Paul.
But these guys live it.
That's what I mean.
They live it to the 10th.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So So there, the momentum is building for this race between Segrave and Gar Wood, and they're breaking the record and they're getting ready to do this thing. And so what comes out of this, of course, like I say, this national tragedy. But at the same time, what comes out of this is that it's this sense of how, using Segrave's death, like, we are not going to be denied this Harmsworth.
Yeah.
Segrave died to get this Harmsworth trophy, to bring this trophy back to England. And so now what becomes of this, Lord Wakefield is determined. He'll spend his entire fortune on this if needs be.
Sure.
The British public, this is not just a couple of random racing fans. The British public wants this championship for Segrave. The British government is determined to get them this championship, to get them this trophy. So this is what comes out of of Segrave and his life, and this is that the attention, the all of a sudden the only thing that people have at this exact moment in time is speedboat racing.
Right.
That's it.
Yeah.
There's This is now this is an international competition of what it was originally sort of supposed to be, which is you've got the entire British public is now wants this trophy. They want it. They got Rolls-Royce. They got the British Air Ministry. They've got the richest people in England. They got everybody involved with this. And this has got to happen, right? Mm-hmm. And then over here in America, you've got Gar Wood, the king, the speedboat champion, the king, who is not going to go down easily. Nope. And he's finally got the challenge he wants. And now the challenge is, this is a unified effort by a lot of very powerful people that want this championship to happen. Yeah. You know what I mean? It's not just a bunch of rich guys trying to fend off.
Well, who's the next driver?
That's what we're going to find out in the next episode.
Okay.
But like I say, but that's what sort of emerges
what is the
out of
Segrave Trophy?
Well, so I put that up there just to show like the kind of impact he had. Yeah. So there's actually a trophy called the Segrave Trophy.
Okay.
And so the trophy, his wife they commissioned it, but it's like there's actually like a royal charter. That's why I included the picture.
Right.
We got a picture of this. It's a really cool trophy.
Sure.
I mean, this thing is like super cool. It's almost like Liberty or like Britannia, like the goddess of
Lady
the waves.
Justice.
Yeah, well,
just something very stirring like that.
Yeah, I think it's Britannia because like Britannia is like this. Like in instead of like lady, like we have Lady Liberty.
Sure.
Over in England, they have Britannia, who's like the mistress, like the god of like the waves. You know what I mean? They have Britannia, or the goddess of Britain type of thing.
Okay.
That's their sort of Lady Liberty, and so I think that's Britannia. And then they have this huge charter, which is like this is like the description of who gets to win this trophy, and it's basically. There's a ton of details about it, but the general idea is every year it gets awarded to somebody who does something extraordinary in the realm of like speed and mechanics and like flying airplanes or boats, or it can be sort of around.
It's not limited to
mechanical like engineering or anything like this.
Because he was all over the place. He was the trifecta.
Exactly. Yeah. So there's like it was awarded to men and women.
Okay.
Where there was like people that doing like the kind of Charles Lindbergh thing where they're flying like first person to fly straight to South Africa, the first British person to like make it from England to South Africa by plane.
Innovators.
Won the award. Innovators and exactly. So every year. I think it's been awarded every single year, but it didn't necessarily have to get awarded. Like unless it had to be something, it wasn't just like a participation trophy. Nobody really did anything special this year. They were always looking for something that was was unique and trying to push extraordinary. So it's actually a Segrave Trophy, which I'm not really sure how much attention it gets anymore. But it's just that's like I say. This is one of the reasons I wanted to do this episode.
The Segrave behind it is just moving.
Yeah. So that's what I'm saying. Like that's why one of the reasons why I love doing this show is we got to focus on this guy.
Who talks about this guy?
Nobody. I mean, it's and this guy lived this incredible life story, and even in his death, as we're going to see going forward, the focus. I mean, speedboat racing for the next 3 years here is going to be the only thing that matters.
Right.
Like this.
What year are we in right here?
Right. So Segrave dies in 1930.
Okay. Wow. Okay. So, closing in on.
Yeah. So we're moving it. So now, so it's the
1930.
So I don't.
So they didn't race.
So they didn't race in 19. So the Harmsworth was not happening in 1930, but in 31 they're going to be coming back.
All right.
So like going forward, 30. So going forward now is when we're going to really start seeing like when you've got. Every single person, like the biggest companies, the biggest financiers, the British public, you've got everybody behind this. That's when you're going to start to see, the challenge. It's not people's boats aren't going to be breaking down in the middle of the second lap or whatever.
Yeah,
I mean, like this is these boats. They're coming for real now, and they're coming for the Gar Wood's trophy. And that's what's going to be so astonishing about the story going forward is what Gar Wood has to do
to defend that Harmsworth.
To defend this Harmsworth against the biggest. I mean, he wants I'm going to end up with this. He wants competition. He's about to get it in a big time way.
All right. And so we're up to the Miss America 7 and 8.
He's at the 8, yep.
Yeah.
So there's 2 more levels to go.
All right.
The Miss America 10 is the next level, but is the highest form. So, but he's at the 8 right now, and as we've seen, the Miss England 2, they got these engines that are ripping 2,000 horsepower, and they got 2 of them that are doing 2,000 horsepower apiece. So Gar Wood's got to come up with something pretty special to start matching this because this I don't even know what the specs were for the 8 off the top of my head, but I don't think the 8's going to cut it. We'll see, but I don't think the 8's going to cut it. He's like, I always got to take
even with the magic man behind the wheel.
Yeah, it's not even about the driving. The engineering is what key. The power, the boat, the weight, and all this. They got the Miss England 2 coming over that's got these new Rolls Royce 2,000-pound horsepower engines in it.
All right, if you want to find out if Gar Wood is going to do it, you got to like, subscribe, collect, pick it up and put it in a basket, whatever it is on the podcast experience.
Like, thumbs up, do your thing. Help us out.
Share it with a friend. Tell a couple people about the podcast. We appreciate that. And tweet it, comment on it. Those are all great things. So thanks for being with us. Thanks to Chris for Chris is doing all kinds of crazy stuff.
We love
behind
Chris,
the scenes.
man. Chris is the man, dude.
So other people saying hi while we're on the air there. Catherine,
my sister. We love Catherine, of course.
Thanks, Catherine, and everybody who's been popping in and listening. We appreciate you, and we'll do it again next time. It's Detroit City of Champions podcast.